We are hopelessly trapped with those things. All around us, they shriek from the darkness.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be trapped in an old temple filled with aggressive monsters? No? You haven't? Oh well, just pretend you have. Welcome to the Dark Pictures Anthology, House of Ashes. House of Ashes is a 2021 interactive survival horror game developed by SuperMassive Studios. If you played Until Dawn, which you probably have, I mean everybody's played that game, then you know what I'm talking about. These interactive survival horrors play somewhat like a scary movie, except you can prevent the characters from doing the painfully stupid things that always get them killed in the movies. Well, most of the time you can. Sometimes it's just unavoidable. Well, in this entry we have a whole new cast of characters, a new monster, and a whole lot of new ways to prematurely end our lives. Sounds like a blast, right? Anyways, let's not dawdle. Let's dust ourselves off and go exploring the world of House of Ashes. Quick spoiler warning here, the story of this game is pretty much the whole game because, well, it's essentially an interactive movie. Definitely recommend you to check it out if you have the time. You've been warned. Also, if you enjoy the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Don't forget to leave a comment. Thank you. Now back to the video.
I'm telling you, when the queen bitch finds out about this, she's gonna flip her shit.
Rachel and I, we know each other. She'll understand all's fair in love and war.
Sir?
The queen bitch you're referring to is his wife.
Let's talk about the gameplay and characters, shall we? The gameplay is simple. You control 5 military-affiliated characters, Marines specifically, as well as an Iraqi soldier, and simply walk around and investigate clues, while also making dialogue choices that impact the story. During cutscenes, there are sometimes QTEs, or QuickTime events if you're unfamiliar, that you must press in time in order to complete an action. At times, it's beneficial to intentionally fail these actions because sometimes they can lead to a character's death. Oh yeah, did I mention that all 5 of the characters are constantly vulnerable to being permanently removed from the game? Especially anytime you see this little guy in his cheery bowler hat lurking in the background? Yeah, and if one of them passes away, typically brutally might I add, their parts for the rest of the game are just gone with the wind. Yeah, it can be pretty unforgiving and it's difficult for everyone to survive. You might think, oh, I should fail this QuickTime event to cut this rope holding 2 of my characters up because I don't want one of them to fall to their death. But surprisingly, if you complete the QTE, both characters fall to their death. It's like being stuck in one long saw trap and the character's fates are in your hand. No pressure. Back to the dialogue choices, you can play through the game and be the worst person to walk the earth. I mean, you can choose some diabolical choices. But I have a conscience, and I even feel guilty being mean in video games, so I try to be the nice guy and keep things civil. Plus, maintaining good relationships between the characters can help them survive. I have a heart, guys, okay? I can't just say some of these things because they are dark. And I'm a big baby that's incapable of being this twisted in a video game, but sue me, I'm sorry. Anyway, let's talk about these potential havoc wreakers. We have 5 characters we play as throughout the game. Rachel Tisdale, Eric, Jason, a long way from Ted Lasso Nick, and Salim. Ashley Tisdale is Rachel because SuperMassive has some sort of obsession with getting every Zack and Cody character in the games for some reason. Rachel is our former commanding officer before her husband, or ex-husband, or estranged husband, not really sure here, arrives. Rachel has been distanced from Eric, said husband, and is now romantically involved with Nick, which I'm sure won't cause any problems down the line. Anyway, Rachel is our strong woman that somewhat keeps the team together at times and sometimes makes terrible decisions that could doom the entire group, but don't blame her, pretty much every character does this at some point. Eric is our new commanding officer and the ex, or well, maybe estranged husband of Rachel Ashley Tisdale. He is not well received by the new soldiers initially, but he's convinced he knows where a stash of chemical weapons are that really sets the whole game in motion. Thanks, Eric! Jason is one of my favorite characters and he has some really strong character development. Jason is a blue-blooded American to the core Marine and commands a deal of respect with the other soldiers. Jason is trying to do what he can to get everyone out alive, even if that means overcoming his prejudice against an Iraqi soldier, and ultimately making friendship with one to escape. Wow, Jason. I'm so proud of you, buddy. Nick is a sergeant that has become romantically involved with Eric's ex-wife Rachel, which leads to some tension throughout the story. That's pretty much it for him. He can be grumpy, but he has a strong bond with Jason and just wants to do the right thing. Oh yeah, and he's haunted about murdering an innocent woman that they mistook for a violent enemy. Probably should mention that. Now Salim is my other favorite character. He is a semi-pacifist Iraqi soldier that just wants to be home with his son and is tired of the violence. I say semi-pacifist because he has no qualms slaughtering our monster friends throughout the game, but I mean, who wouldn't? Also, the relationship between Salim and Jason and their character development is probably my favorite writing from any SuperMassive game I've ever played. I love this character arc, and you can't tell me with a straight face it doesn't make you at least a little emotional. We have a few side characters as well. Joey, I think, is just there to show the humanity of the soldiers and how a lot of casualties happen to people who never wanted to be in the war in the first place. Merwin is a comic relief and death fodder. Clarice is again just death fodder. Dar just brings a little conflict, but is ultimately also just death fodder. None of these characters heavily impact the story, but they serve their purpose. Okay, so basically, long story short, I love Salim and Jason. Rachel and Eric can be a bit irritating at times, but they're still somewhat enjoyable, and Nick is somewhat one-dimensional. There's a whole plot arc of Rachel, Eric, and Nick's love triangle, but it really doesn't go anywhere, at least in my opinion. I don't know, I wasn't super captivated by it, and it seemed insignificant to me. Sorry, I watch enough spicy reality TV, I get my fill on a daily basis. Anyway, let's move on to the story.
I hope you're a believer, brother. When those things come back, you're going to need higher power to pray to.
The prologue opens in the Akkadian Empire, which is around 2000 BC. We see two ancient warriors from opposing sides, one of which is about to be executed. Well, it's his lucky day because there is some commotion interrupting executions today. Well, it was his lucky day until we find out that commotion was some super hungry vampire monsters coming out to say hey for the solar eclipse, and we're on the menu tonight. Despite our best efforts, the soldiers meet a fate yet to be revealed, and we cut to present day. We start off as high-ranking military official Eric, traveling to a military base in Iraq near the Zagros Mountains with his assistant scientist Clarice. We're greeted by Jason and are introduced to the residents of the base. Rachel, our estranged ex-wife who we find out is romantically involved with Nick, the crude-humored Merwin, Joey, and a bunch of these unnamed side marines who I'm sure are going to make it through this game alive. Anyway, Eric is certain Saddam Hussein is stashing chemical weapons somewhere underneath a nearby farm, and it's our job to infiltrate it. We cut to Salim for a bit and find out it's his son's birthday and he's waiting for his son to return home to give him a gift. Then his General Dar forces him to come with him to ambush our soldier crew. It's a pretty brief section with Salim, sadly, because, well, I love Salim, and the more time playing as him, the happier I am. But we cut back to our soldier crew. Well, we find nothing at the farm other than some frightened, albeit rather spit-happy heroin farmers, until we are ambushed by Salim and his General Dar. The ensuing violence leaves side character Joey dead. Don't cry too hard, guys. I know you guys loved him and his jokes about your mother. We then are plummeted in some caves below the farm. Yeah, you guessed it, these caves are pretty familiar. They're the same ones from the intro. Well, it's been 4,000 years. Surely those monster things are gone, right? Right? Well, it doesn't take long for Clarice to get snatched by something that's surely not the monster, and we see definitely a bear in these tunnels, right? Okay, enough denial. The vampires are here, and they are rampant. Well, after a lot of time running around and narrowly avoiding these beasts with our various characters, we finally take control of Eric and Rachel, who have found some sort of camp in the throne room. It looks like there was an expedition team that came here in the 1940s, and their notes are going to be our collectibles with some helpful lore to guide us through this mess. Anyway, Eric and Rachel get a generator running, which provides much needed light, and we're just going to leave them to sort out those marital problems they've got going on. Let's pan over to some different characters. After a near-death encounter with the monsters from Salim, we learn the beasts are weak to sunlight, can't see us and rely on hearing, and actually can be killed via a stake to the heart, a la vampires. Well, minus the no sight part of vampires at least, I think they got that from A Quiet Place or from bats or something. Now, as you can see, I'm not talking about some edgy, good-looking vampires like the Cullen family. No, these are some deformed, scary, buck-teeth skull vampires. Trust me, it makes a lot creepier of a story having these run after you than Edward Cullen and his hair products. Well, at least I think it does. Anyway, Salim and Nick team up to kill one of these monsters from the movie The Descent, you know, the cave diving one. Please tell me you get that reference. And Salim is promptly tied up and treated as a hostage for his help. I mean, come on guys, can we put our differences aside for a minute? Jeez. Anyways, after some helpful diversions from Dar that involve him trying to murder our comrades, Salim escapes. Rachel falls off the side of a cliff, and our potty-mouthed friend Merwin is on the brink of death. Sounds like a happy situation for everybody, right? Well, Eric, Jason, and Nick are all together now with Salim observing from afar, and Rachel is dead. Nah, I'm just kidding. She's just swimming in a pool of blood with one of those vampire monsters in the liquid with her. Okay, maybe she'd rather be dead. I'll say here, this is my favorite part of the game in terms of tension. I mean, you can hear the beast slushing around behind you, and you're just trying to get through the area as fast as you can. It's a blast. Well, turns out Clarice is alive, but she's been infected by the vampires, and she's going to turn into one of them. So naturally, we abandon her down there. Sorry, Clarice, can't risk you killing my main characters. Also, you remember Joey? The guy you were so sad died earlier after his 15 minutes of screen time? Well, he's alive. He's just a murderous vampire patient, and he's going to try to kill you, but he's alive. Well, actually, he's probably not anymore because we stabbed him and threw him off a cliff. Sorry, Joey. But it was fun while it lasted. Well, we get our radio fix from our dying buddy Merwin just for him to get sniped in the head by Dar, and after an intense shootout, we all meet up for a showdown with the Beast and decide to team up with the Iraqi soldiers for our survival. Rachel turns up and our reunion is short-lived because we have to run. This battle splits everybody up and leaves everyone a little worse for wear. Jason and Salim decide to explore the depths to figure out what's going on, while Nick, Rachel, and Eric all link up together. Oh yeah, and Dar was used as death fodder for the vampires. Remember those two ancient soldiers from the beginning of the game? Well, one of them is kinda the head vampire, and he can see us, while we find the other preserved in some sort of gel. Well, half of him at least. See, I told you they'd come back. Turns out down here in the depths of the cave, we find the holy mother load of vampire eggs, and they're just waiting to hatch. After a couple close encounters with Jason and Salim and a whole lot of angry vampires, we link back up with Nick, Rachel, and Eric and crawl into their band room. By that I mean this is where they play their amazing tunes, and we find out Rachel has been infected. I knew we wouldn't be able to get through this game without someone getting infected. Well, since we left Clarice behind, I guess we should let Rachel end herself, right? Yeah, no, sorry, but Rachel's one of our playable characters, so she has plot armor. Well, our handy UV light that works like sunlight causes a bloated worm alien thing to crawl out of Rachel, which we get some prompt smashing revenge on. Turns out these aren't your typical vampires, they're actually alien parasites that infect human bodies and transform them into these beasts. Some of the collectibles even note that the beast's teeth are actually the tentacles of the parasite that infects people. Creepy. Well, Nick heroically volunteers to deal with this motherlode nest of vampires we're down here with, which he says he'll go alone because they'll be easier to spot in a group, but aren't the creatures blind? Anyway, it works out because once Nick gets the charges set and detonates them all, he's promptly attacked by our ancient hero leader vampire. Salim comes in for the save and takes out the leader, a little anticlimactically, but oh well. The group makes their escape, but Salim gets separated, and of course as Jason we cannot leave our new bestie behind. We have an awesome action sequence and a wholesome moment where Jason welcomes Salim as a fellow honorary Marine, and the group escapes. Well, Eric and Rachel deal with Clarice really quick, but it's pretty minor and doesn't affect much. We escape and we're home free, right? Yeah, not quite. Turns out the eclipse is today. I mean, what are the odds? This feels like one of those, can this day get any worse moments, and it starts raining. Well, all of our little vampire buddies come out and start attacking us, but we have an epic circle of defense moment until air support comes and saves us for good. Our post-credit scene shows a bunch of scientists investigating our cast, and most importantly, poor Salim still hasn't gotten to go home and see his son. Conspiracy theorists will love this because we hear the government talking about how they're just going to cover all this up and they'll continue investigating. Kind of a sad ending, to be honest. Wow, that's a lot that happened. Long story short, we avoid a bunch of creepy vampire monsters for a long time and escape many near-death incidents, only to be rescued and kidnapped by the government for heavy interrogation. Oh yeah, and we took out a bunch of vampires with us. Pretty cool, right? Well, let's get into the weeds. I have to say my absolute favorite moment in the game is Salim and Jason's hike through the hive.
I ordered for her to stop, loud and clear, but she didn't. She just kept on walking. I had to make a call. Nick, he shot her dead.
Salim is tired of the war and just wants peace, whereas Jason is slow to trust, but finally opens up to Salim that he had no direction in life, and the military gives him a purpose before welcoming him as a brother in arms. Semper Fi. I'm not crying, you are. Seriously, this is some of the best character development and relationship I've seen in a SuperMassive game, and even if it is a bit cliche, it works every time. Hats off for this character relation. I also think the studio really nailed the tension aspect of the game. I'm not gonna lie, they got me a few times with jump scares, but even worse than that was the constant feeling of being followed or watched by one of these monsters. We'd often get shots of one watching us from afar, from a shaky camera angle far away, Predator style, that made me a bit hesitant to explore areas for collectibles because I was really trying to get through the game with everyone alive. You know that feeling when you're walking to the bathroom in the middle of the night and you speed up a bit because you're kind of scared? Don't lie. Wait, that's just me? Forget I said anything. The story is, well, I would call it solid. It's not gonna wow you with originality. I mean, it's essentially a group of friends stuck in a deadly place together and need to escape. If you've seen The Descent, Prometheus, or even The Thing, you've seen a similar story. However, all these movies are great, and it's a common formula in media that just works. The execution is solid, it's not overly cheesy, and the suspense and tension are extremely well crafted. That's not easy to do. Or maybe I'm just a big baby. I do get scared in games, I'll be the first to admit it, okay? But dang it, I enjoyed this one. I haven't played the other Dark Anthology games, but I have played and platinumed both Until Dawn and The Quarry, and I will say, I enjoyed those games quite a bit too. So I can't wait to check out some of the other entries in the series. Now for a few cons of the game, and no, I'm not saying it's a bad game, just want to provide a few critiques I had. First, there are a couple plot points throughout the game that just feel unimportant. Forgetting the love triangle between our main characters, because one could argue that's a necessary side story. Things like the fact that Eric lost a leg are randomly brought up and seemingly forgotten later. Merwin has to be protected for the first few hours of the game, and then we seemingly just forget about him for a few chapters. That's probably the one that bothered me the most. I mean, we went through so much trouble to save him and drag him away from the monsters, told Eric to keep watch, then suddenly Eric just joins us and we forget about him for a long time. Someone randomly whistles up to Merwin, and unless I missed it, that's never explained. Not sure what that was all about. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is sometimes it feels like the game tries to do too much. They introduce these little side plots that are just dropped and never talked about again, or seem to have no significance to the overall plot. If you disagree, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something and I'd love to hear your opinion. Aside from that, the voice acting can be a bit mediocre at times, looking at you, Nick, but it's not game changing. It just feels a bit dull at times and can make some longer dialogue stretches of the game a bit boring. I will say that both Rachel and Jason are fantastic, and I love their voice actors' work. They did a great job. These critiques aside, as long as you're into these interactive movie games, you should enjoy the game. The story is good for horror fans, most of the characters are multi-dimensional, and the monsters are well designed with some pretty cool lore. Overall, House of Ashes is a solid game with some good character development, a pretty solid story, some genuine scares, strong tension, and most importantly, it offers a really fun and engaging 6 or so hours. Personally, when I finish these games, I love playing them again to see the different routes and deaths throughout because, well, I'm crazy. So I know what I'm going to be doing once I finish editing this video.
You're wrong. Salim is one of us now. Marines don't leave their own behind. You hearing me, Salim?
If I don't make that, tell my son I did everything I could.
Tell him yourself. I'm coming to get you.
If you like interactive games and haven't checked this one out, you need to add it to the list because SuperMassive always delivers. As always, don't get buried in the ash, and remember, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Until next time, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you'd probably like to check out my video on Stellar Blade. You can watch it here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Until next time.